Recorded November 8th, 2023. Where's everybody? It's only Ed today. Am I that bad of a co-host that my brethren have abandoned me? No worries. So to our listeners out there, this is okay. Rod is doing things for Ignite. Brody is on vacation, and Andrea is teaching a Sentinel class. So they leave me with no adult supervision to be able to have our next guest. So this it's nice to have the keys to the kingdom, right? They can do whatever I like. We will have a ghost. A ghost. Ha, I'm reading my own caption. We will have a guest co-host coming on, and you're right. So this is like Highlander. There can only be one. So we took care of Brody first. He was the weakest. Andrea was next, just naive and unsuspecting. Rod was a challenge, but eventually I wore him down, so it's just me now. King of the house. Um, Before I get into the business of the day, I'll give a couple more minutes for our co-host to come on. But thanks everybody. A lot of good things to talk about today. I think you're going to enjoy the guest we have tonight. It's a previous guest on the show, and a very interesting thing that he did. So good for that. And it looks like my co-host is here. Beth.
Hello, Edward.
Hello, Beth.
Can you hear me
Uh,
okay?
I can hear you better than I can see you.
Oh, no.
You're just a black screen. You got something protecting your laptop. There you go.
No, it was just slow.
It was just slow. How you doing?
Oh, I'm good. Just running behind on everything today, obviously.
Oh, yeah. Your audio is running behind also. About 5 seconds.
Okay, let's give that a minute to catch up to.
You got too many things open on your laptop.
Let me fix that problem.
I I guess it's in the green room and he's listening like Japanese monster version. Yeah, when they talking, the fire's already come out of Godzilla's mouth before you hear the sound, right? I may go watch one of those old Godzilla movies. Oh man, they're great. Just lowbrow entertainment. That's what
Sounds
I need.
sounds like a really entertaining evening.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so
Is that better?
yeah, you hear you just fine. It's a little bit of a lag. You're on wireless. That's what it is.
Yep, sure am. I don't even think
Mhm.
I have a network cable to plug
Uh,
in anywhere near my device.
and it absolutely says, um, for better performance and results, plug into a wired connection.
That's why
Nobody needs it.
I need a networking guy to to
I know one.
get
I
that
don't.
connection going.
Beth, I've sent you firewalls, switches, routers. I even told you we would do a CCNA boot camp just for you. I teach you the network. You're like, nope, just
No,
turn on Wi-Fi and I'm good.
it's the services that we're missing. I got the
Uh,
devices. I think I ended up shipping them back after about a year.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. That was a very nice Fortinet that that I sent you, and you gave it back, and I gave it to someone else, so they need it. Um, but hey, we got folks in here. I see Noodles here and a few others. Everybody's been like, "Have we been enjoying the monster spam all week?" Yeah, that's about right. So, Beth, what are you going to be doing here soon?
yeah, I'm headed over to Seattle Sunday. So I guess I plan my travel a little bit extended in the beginning. But the reason that I'm headed to Seattle is because Ignite is next week. So this will be my first opportunity to present at Ignite and actually helping with the lab. So there's a really fantastic end-to-end security and even compliance lab with Purview and Defender, as well as Entra. And we have a good long set of attendees that will be part of that as well.
Yeah, I will also be there, presenting and or helping with the lab both. You and I will bump heads and see each other. We haven't been in the same room since January.
Mm-hmm.
February, one like that. We were up in Redmond for a boot camp. So it'd be
Yeah.
good to catch up with you, see how you're doing and everything. Yeah, I will be there also, and I also have some team breakouts and a few other things I can get accomplished. Not looking forward to the weather,
Oh, I haven't even looked yet. What's the weather supposed to be?
not like it is here in Atlanta. It's 78 degrees today.
Okay, well,
You,
it's raining and I don't know, maybe 40 here today in Chicago.
you know what they say: choose your state, choose your fate.
Yeah.
There you go. Anything cool tech you worked on this week?
So lots of things are happening. I guess let me think about some really interesting. We're learning more about Security Copilot every single
Hmm.
day. Um, that's awesome. So I think it's really interesting to even get to use just the Microsoft 365 Copilot as part of Teams calls and to understand how that actually saves time and even allows I guess my lack of focus. It lets me catch up really quickly. If I hear, a keyword in a conversation, for example, I get to
Hmm.
kind of go back and ask what happened around that keyword. And it feeds the information back in a very conversational format. So I don't feel like I missed anything, even though I was multitasking. And typically, I don't multitask very well, so my zone goes, from one direction to another.
Hmm.
So I guess just like relating that to the security world and understanding what that's going to do for our analysts and to really change, the game in terms of um, what the day in the life is going to look like for the analysts and the SecOps team going forward.
Hmm.
I just think it's just really fascinating and it's super cool because it really changes everything.
Yeah, I, I I I I touch it indirectly as you do. We're not actually on that team, but the products that we work on have some form of you know generative AI or generative AI inside of it. And obviously, Sentinel, was the first with machine learning first before they started putting the AI moniker upon it. And I think that was just maybe a hybrid with a Yuba capabilities. Um, I got pulled into some stuff around MDE this week, which is outside of my role designation now, since I'm selling, first party security services around a customer that has a huge Mac footprint, and understanding that, and it's a unique attack that seems to be going around. I think it's SIP bypass and a couple other things. So I'm looking at that, and then Linux. So whenever I believe I'm out of the world of CLI, I'm pulling right back into it. So that's pretty good. Some purview stuff, which I fielded the call thinking it was something else until I pulled in a purview or inside a risk GBB to really handle it, because the identity capabilities of Intra is massive.
Hmm.
There's so much you can do inside the thing. Um, I love the conditional access templates, especially the ones like fish resistant MFA and a
Yeah.
few others that sort of try to mitigate MFI fatigue. I think the fatigue is, if people will just implement the thing that go with a numerical, confirmation rather than just hit pound voice. If I was in the industry, I would. Security also is often seen as the bad guys, but there would be no negotiation on MFA, and then there would be no negotiation on the MFA method. It would be strong MFA. Period. You would have to pick up the authenticator. You would have to look at the number, and you would have to put it in. Nothing else, right?
Hmm.
Because even if you get
Yeah.
MFA fatigue, if someone's pinging you in the middle of the night, you just hit, yeah, that's me, right? And I
Hmm.
think we need to educate more. I think our previous guest talked about security awareness. Awareness is products are not going to get you out of it. You
No, not
have
at
to
all.
you have to involve your constituents and make them feel like they are part of the solution.
Hmm.
Period. You have to reward good behavior and quit gravitating to punishing, what you may deem as bad behavior, right? And that's
Hmm.
going on. You know, Noodle said, just add all the users to a group and then exclude the group from CAMFA problem solve. Yeah, that would be a thing. So we'll see. Yeah.
So Yeah, on that topic though, there was actually an announcement just yesterday, that Microsoft Authenticator is now blocking suspicious MFA alerts by default. So, I guess certainly MFA is necessary. At the same time, it allows for any attacker generated MFA notifications to be blocked before they ever get to the user.
I would give a idea to the intra security team, Alex Simon and the rest of the Azure AD/intra. What should be a feature, and if it is, I don't know about it. You should have time of day MFA and safe time of day authentication, meaning if your business only operates in a specific set of time zones, or you know that someone getting an MFA authentication at 2 in the morning is out of the norm for someone in the Eastern time zone, that should be a condition that you can set. Do not allow, MFA authentication during this time unless the person is previous in a current session, something along, because sometimes some people may have a reason for logging in, because I travel a lot. So I think I did one of the shows from Greece. So I was 6 hours ahead. So at about 11 o'clock, you guys were kicking the show off. I was in my fourth beer and decided I'm going to join the podcast. So I've been doing the Linux stuff, Mac OS, some more MDI stuff, oddly enough. It's people are seeing that it's a customer that has Okta, but, they're not protecting their on premise AD. And I'm like, don't blame the Microsoft authentication framework or fabric when it's the attack vector, when you need to put something in and they can look at this lateral movement and these attack vectors. And they're E5. I'm like, this is not trying to displace Okta. Okta doesn't have that. You need to put this on your thing, on your directory services to be able to do it.
Right.
And then, because that's going to help protect you against any attack that's taking advantage of your cloud connect, your cloud sync, right? Your AD connect, right? And federation. So they're federated because they're with Okta doing SSO. You got to have these protections, right? So I've been playing around with that. I actually going to jump into a lab because it's simple on the surface. MDI is powerful.
Yeah.
What else I've been breaking? Something killed my G Suite stuff. So as I was trying to get some notes to be able to send over to, I think, Trevor, on how to ingest Google Cloud telemetry in on the cheap, my subscription broke, so I got to figure that out.
So I need an AWS. So we're gonna play a little bit more with that one, especially on the Gov side. So, yep, that's another project. I guess you mentioned the GCP.
Yeah, my AWS stuff seems to still be running. You got to realize my foray into that wasn't Azure at first. It was MCAS/MDA. So I had all the MCAS session inspection going on. Then I started ingesting stuff in the Sentinel, right? Noodle said, "Where is my blog post, Microsoft Insights on GCP?" We'll do it. I got to get my lab back up, so that I haven't been able to help. I'll do it. I got a little bit of time during the night to geek out, so I do it then. But other than that, yeah.
Yeah, I intentionally kept some space open. It just feels like a lot of back-to-back and not enough time to geek out recently. So that's kind of what I'm looking for at Ignite.
I am going to geek out. So we got our guest in the green room. He's probably eating up all the snacks and drinking up all the beer and doing stuff. We got to get him out of there, right? So let's go ahead and bring our guest in, and I'll allow him to reintroduce himself to our listeners who don't know of him. So give me a second here. Let me bring him in at the stage. Gary, what's up, man?
Thanks for having me back.
Hey,
Man,
Gary.
you're always welcome here. I almost bailed on the show and just let you co-host. You and Beth. I started to do that and just not show up and let you guys two do it. And
I was wondering when you disappeared for a while.
I know, but I said Beth would absolutely kill me to death.
Yes, I would. Especially because I didn't have time to grab my glass of wine. Speaking of 4 beers in.
Red Cup Security.
Red Solo.
See you at Ignite. See you tonight. Red Cup Security to our listeners. Oh, yeah. I got to get some official cup, mate. These are like little letters I put on there. They're worn out from all the use. So, Gary, what brings you back on the show this time? What are you going to enthrall our listeners with? But you notice calling you the legend in all caps, right? So there you go. With Crypto the Wonder Dog.
Yeah, he's now asleep. Well, for those who don't know me, I'm Gary Bushey. I am a Microsoft Sentinel CXE. So basically, I work between customers and the product group to make sure they're talking to each other. I came up through the lines as being a developer, so I'm still developing all the time, and that's near and dear to my heart. And that's what I did. I wrote a program in PowerShell, which will allow you to do a documentation on your Microsoft Sentinel environment. Now, this is first edition. There's going to be more added to it as I figure out how to do more and more and get suggestions. One of the suggestions already has been to add the RBAC rules around it so that people know the access. But it's written in PowerShell, so anybody can download it, look at it, figure out how it does what it does, and it makes extensive use of the Sentinel REST API calls. Most of them are the preview because there's a lot of features within Sentinel now that are still in preview. And for those that don't know, the Sentinel REST API is divided into two parts. You have the quote-unquote stable and then preview. Now, just because it says preview doesn't mean it's not stable. It's just hasn't been released as a stable environment yet. So a lot of the preview features are obviously new, and you can't get them in the stable listings. For instance, being able to get all the solutions. Now, if you're familiar with Sentinel and how we've operated prior to about, 4 or 5 months now, we would have a listing of all the out-of-the-box, for instance, the analytic rule templates. Those would be already pre-populated. Now, if you create a new Sentinel instance, it's pretty much empty. There's a couple rule templates around the Fusion and some of the being able to get the information from the other Microsoft products, but for the most part, it's empty. And there's no workbook templates, no playbook templates. You get all those through solutions. So when you install a solution, it'll populate this stuff. Now, the problem is finding out what solutions you have installed and then what those solutions have installed. So if you have a brand new environment, you can make a call to the content products, I believe it is, that will give you a list of all the solutions that you have installed. However, if you have an older environment that you may have done work before we switched over to solutions, it's not quite that easy. So that's the hardest part that I had to figure out is what calls to make to get all the information we need. Now, the great part is, for those that don't know, Chrome, Edge, I'm sure Firefox, but I never use it, has this great feature called developer tools that will allow you to watch your network traffic. And then there's always going to be, at least in Sentinel, something called batch, I think it's batch API. And then that allows Microsoft team to make multiple calls to the REST APIs at the same time. So if you find that, that's a good way to look, expand that out. You can see the calls that are being made. You can see what's being returned, so on and so forth. As a matter of fact, I am in the process of writing a book about the Sentinel REST APIs and how to use them. Granted, we have documentation already. This is going to expand that a bit more.
Yeah, I when I was doing a lot with MCAS and a lot of session inspection and stuff, all browsers seem to have agreed on one thing. If you hit F12, it'll come up for you. And you can see the stuff. You can see exchanges, HTTP calls, and everything. So
exactly,
yeah, do that, and you can record it too. So when you can record what the sessions are doing. So if you close your browser or come out of F12, you can go back and replay what was in there. And I suspect a lot of nefarious actors use that to understand where they're navigating, so they don't have to start over.
Right.
But let me ask you a quick question. Maybe you're going to cover this when you get in, so I'll hold on until I think that you're not. So it seems like seeing this in action is the thing. Is this something you can show us? Get it going? So let me make you presenter real quick.
How do I share? What is this button? Is this share?
It's a present button. You might be able to see. And I would love to get a preview of that book, Gary.
Okay.
You should be able to, at the very bottom, go present.
Yeah, just trying to figure out if it has multiple monitors. I want to make sure I'm sharing the right thing.
It sort of clues you that way.
All right, what should I share then?
You got something.
Knock
It
that out.
says, there you go. Microsoft
Does that look good?
documentation. I can
All
see
right.
your Microsoft Sentinel documentation.
That's exactly what we're supposed to see.
Oh,
Try
okay.
this out. All right. So this is the actual end document that gets generated, and I'm using this against my own environment right now. So you can see the resource group name and the workspace name. And as we go down the document, we have the table of contents where we're showing all the different solutions. Now it says solutions, but it could also be standalone. It's basically anything that shows up in the content hub. So I might change that a little bit later. Then we have, come on, workbooks and workbook templates, the hunts, repositories, data connectors. I'm going to talk about data connectors a little bit. Analytic rules, watch list, automation rules, and then settings. So for each of these installed solutions, this is slightly out of date. I've added underneath the version, whether it's a standalone or a solution. And then the real hard part, for me at least, was figuring out all of this information here. Now, if you look at a content hub solution, you have the description here, and most of them include this information. This information is hard coded as part of the description, so it may not necessarily be accurate. For instance, Amazon Web Services now has 55 analytic rules. And the other issue is this is all done in HTML, and I could not for the life of me figure out how to do HTML inside a Word document without it looking like, you looked at the source code for HTML, which never looks good. But anyway, it gives you the information regarding what's going to be installed or what has been installed in this case.
Mm-hmm.
And as we go down, we go to repositories. So you have the repository name. If it has a description, it's going to show it what it's going against, either Azure DevOps or GitHub. The repository URL, and what you're going to be pushing through.
Okay.
And then we have the listing of data connectors. Now there is a new REST API called data connectors. And that gives you a lot of information about the data connector, including the KQL that it will use to get whether or not it's connected, as well as showing all the information about the data connector when you go to one. So you have that little graph that shows data coming in.
Mm-hmm.
That's listed, but however, I've found it's not 100% accurate. For instance, one of the ones I was looking at for threat intelligence said to look at a table which does not exist. So it's a little out of date. I'm hoping to figure out a better way of getting that, because I would love to show if these data connectors are actually connected or not. I think that would be very beneficial. Then we go through all the different analytic rules. So we have the severity, the name, the type, enabled or not, and then any of the tactics that it uses, as well as any techniques.
Mm-hmm.
And I go through the watch list, the name, the alias, where it's getting its information from. Now, if it says remote file, that means the file is coming from a Azure Blob storage, and I was not able to obtain the actual file name in that case. And then created last updated time. Blank page. Then we have the different automation rules, including what it's going to go against, whether it's going to hit all the rule names or just certain ones. I tried to mimic this as much as possible against what you would see in a portal when you see the list of the automation rules.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, we have the settings. So is entity behavior analytics turned on? If it is, where are you getting this information? Is it just Azure Active Directory, or does it also include on-premises Active Directory, directory sources? Do you have anomalies enabled? Are you using Workspace Manager in this workspace? Can Microsoft engineers access your data? And then what resource groups have you enabled to use your playbooks for? Now, there's not really a REST API call within Sentinel for that. What you need to do is get a list of all the different resource groups and then look for a specific permission on that. And then finally, is auditing and health monitoring turned on? And if it is, what information are you getting?
So
Now,
let me ask you a
yeah,
quick
go ahead.
question. The way you started off this, if for our listeners who are actually viewing it at the same time, is this the how-to document or the resultant document?
This is a result of how your Sentinel environment is currently set up.
Okay. Yeah. And we have we have a question from Noodle. Can you make a call to a list for all the rules for a solution? I think you just answered that, right?
Kind of, sort of, yes. There is I have to double check because I always get these mixed up. So there's the content templates REST API call that you can make. That's
Mhm.
going to list all the templates for all the solutions that you have installed. Assuming it's a new Sentinel instance. If it's an old one, then it's kind of hit or miss. That will list all the types of resources, not just the rules. So you can get that information and filter, see just the rules if that's what you want to do.
Okay. That's good stuff. And so when you're doing this via PowerShell, let's go back to the prerequisites. Do you have a prerequisite section in here or something in your GitHub that understands it? What is the minimal, module? I mean PowerShell version, and what modules do I need to include?
You just need PowerShell 6.2. There's
Mm-hmm.
no additional modules. It will load the Word module if it needs to.
Okay.
So you need to have Microsoft Word on your machine. The only caveat about that is don't have Word running when you're running this program because it gets confused as to which instance it should access.
Okay. Do that. And what about access? What login or security context do I need to be up on there to run this to be able to pull this information?
You'll need to have at least the security or the Sentinel reader to be able to access the information.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the settings itself should be fine with reader. I need to double check that because I added that after the fact. But reader should be enough to get the information.
Okay. And
Do you have to give the application access? Is there like an application access credential as well?
No, when you use PowerShell, you actually log in. So you need to do the connect-AZ account, and then you log into Azure. And then there's all these other PowerShell commands that will give you the appropriate information you need. So all of this is to ultimately get you to this authentication header that you will pass in with every call.
Okay.
So you can see if I scroll down a little bit, I'm doing this invoke REST method, and then I tell it what type of HTML call or HTTP call I'm trying to make. I pass in my URL, and then I pass in my authentication header. One thing I've found is 99% of the REST API calls that return a listing of information will have it underneath the value. So I always just filter that out to make it easier to make my access. If you're making a REST API call that returns just a single value, like if you're getting a single solution, then don't do the dot value because it's just going to pass it all at the top level.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense there. So what if you're in a does it take into account the name of if you have multiple log analytics workspaces, like could an MSSP of a sort of run this to document other environments, or do you have to do it specifically up on a login context for that particular tenant in that Sentinel deployment?
Yeah, you would have to do it specifically for each one because you're required to pass in the workspace and resource group names.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're an MSSP, you could make another PowerShell script that calls this, passing in the resource group and the workspace for each one, and then change the file name each time you make the call as well.
Yeah, with something simple like a numerical 001 to 2, right? Because you would have to query or reference a CSV to be able to pull the actual customer's name into it, and that could be like, yeah, you know, trying
Or
to
you
pull all
could,
your customer name.
I mean, you could make this based on the workspace name, assuming that's going to be unique.
Unique, yeah, yeah, that would make sense for a customer to have some type of, you know, uh, description of what the client workspace is, unless you can't do that, you know, which would identify who the client is, right? So you got to look at it that way. Man, this is pretty cool. Um, how long did you build this?
This has been something I've been doing off and on for quite some time. It was on the back burner until actually Rod asked me if I knew of a program to do just this. I'm like, oh, give me a couple days and I'll finish it.
Nice.
Well,
But
there
a
you
lot of
go.
this, if you're not aware, I have a website called GaryBushey.com, original name.
Was
A
the
lot
mo-
of this information I've taken from other articles I've had in there and just melded it together. One of the newer things, though, is if I go down to, where did I put that? Oh, this must be an older version. 1 second here.
This is actually pretty good. Um, when you finish your next comment, I'm going to ask you about a tool I think you might have used by virtue of your last role, which is not cheap, but I found it highly efficient.
I have a couple of questions as well about this, and I'm really glad that you mentioned your blog because it's spelled out in there, so that's super helpful. Thank you.
Unfortunately, I have an older version here that I don't have all up-to-date code for how I got information. But go ahead and ask your question.
Want to go first, Edward, or should I?
You go ahead. I'm looking at his blog on another thing here, so go ahead.
So my thought process is that this is changing for every Sentinel environment all the time. So it may be nice to have, say, a quarterly report. And then, Edward asked the question about multiple tenants. So I was kind of curious about the possibility of maybe automating this through, say, Azure Functions. Do you think that that's something that makes sense, could be done? I guess maybe, what are your thoughts?
I would think you could do it quite easily. I mean, I've not used Azure Functions too much, but if they can make a call to PowerShell, then you can most definitely automate this process.
Yeah, they can.
Yeah, you can. I see where you're going with this, Beth, so that you don't have to, when you're carrying and feeding Sentinel, updating, changing, whatever, document is the last thing on your minds, but something that would run behind you every week as you do this. So if something went wrong, and you could, not append the file, but have a different file version based on the day it runs, day timestamp, you can go back and look, a week ago, this was like this. What happened, right? And then you can use, the audit to go see who made changes to it, right? So yeah, that makes sense to be able to do it. To do that. I put your website /blog in the chat, so everybody is very informative. It's one of my start pages. I read your stuff, and it's easy to read through, so I like that. And it seems like I can reference other things that you've done. So thanks for that. So there's a tool, and you can buy it. I know that MCS uses it at Microsoft. I tried to get a free license, but you have to be enrolled to use it. You ever use a product called Cloud Docket?
I have before, yes. Previous life.
Yeah, it is.
It's quite nice.
It is. It goes in and it documents stuff very well. It's and you can do multiple environments with it, but the downside of it is it costs so much money, and you can't. It's not key enabled. It's subscription enabled, right? And if you buy the consultant version of it, the price is in 5 digits, thousands of dollars, right? To be able to do it. So you can't just buy one single one, because once you tie it to a subscription, it's bound to that subscription and you can't move it around. So, but this right here definitely is the way to go to at least get an idea of what you're doing in your environment. And if I was a consultant coming in or doing doing any type of discovery, I'm not trusting the customer. And like half of the time, they're gonna say, "Well, we don't have it documented. We don't know how to document Sentinel." And if they do have it, it's screenshots, and they're good as the day the screenshot was taken.
Right.
After that, they have no. So this right here, man, we gotta throw a GUI interface on it. That'll make it. That'll be great there.
I am
I love that
messing
idea.
around with React. That would be a good idea.
Yeah, yeah. I'm all about the GUI. I'll help and do that. Break it in anyway. So when you are running this, um, how does it format that way? Because I see some of the things are all the way and some of them repeat the line, which gives you a squiggly line like it's misspelled or something. How do you keep it so it's on single page to be able to come across?
I mean, most of the time I'm just outputting it, and then at the end of each section I do a line break.
Okay.
That's why you noticed somewhere down here there's an empty page. I guess that's not really empty. Yeah, here's an empty page because this one ended at the page, and then I put in a line break.
And the line break just happened to be a complete page, and then the line started as another page.
And one thing else that I noticed is, for some reason, with the first table, right here, it has this huge space. I don't know why. I cannot figure out what is causing this huge amount of space to be put in just this one column.
In the custom workbooks?
Yeah. So the name, you see the name is way down here when it should be all the way up here.
Workbooks are a combination of KQL and markup. I wonder if it has something to do with it.
Well,
but that would be
I'm just
that would be
outputting text right there. It's just so bizarre.
I wonder if that's having to do with the way the layout is, and you don't see it. I don't know. I wonder if you could go into workbooks, open one up, and then F12 it and take a look inside. Or,
well, I mean, I'm the one creating this table, and I'm just putting out this name as text.
Mm-hmm.
But why it's doing it that way, I have no idea. It's just so weird. So here's the name. I mean, I'm just putting out the text straight as can be. There's no spaces in front of it or anything, and it just does it.
Don't know. Can't hazard a guess. But when I actually download your PowerShell script, I'll take a look at it and everything, and maybe I'll look up and see something in it. But it doesn't seem like anything will make it do that. All the numbers are sequential for the spacing, source time curated. I don't know.
Someone did mention trying to do this as Markdown, which is easy enough to do, but then where would you open it? I could definitely make a version that does Markdown, but you can't open it in Word. I'm not sure where you would actually view that.
Yeah, I guess my thought on that is in like the pipeline, CI/CD pipeline. So if you're integrated with that pipeline, having that as an artifact.
They do it.
Makes sense.
Well, if you want to know, I don't. If you did it XML, I'm not sure. See it then. Open VS Code. Can't you open Markdown? What did I say previously? It's Markdown language. You can't open Markdown in VS Code, can you?
Yeah, you can.
You can.
Yeah, there's a preview window.
Yeah, you're right. You absolutely can. I don't know. Now you got me thinking. I'm going to download this tomorrow, or something to do while I'm in the airport.
and watch. It's very easy to convert, and then you can actually probably push the HTML. That's the solutions description as well.
Yep, you could do that. So now that everything is started moving to solutions, and you do have legacy out there, I'm trying to figure out. Does it duplicate anything? Did you have a problem with duplication of information when you ran it at first?
No, there's no duplication. But what I have, if you see on the screen, to get the information of the resources for the solutions that are deployed, I have to make 3 different calls depending. So if it's a standalone, it's very easy. You can just get the information directly from it. So if it's a standalone solution, there's only going to be one entry in there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's simple enough to figure it out. If it's not, then it's an actual solution. Then I make the call to this new content templates to see if it shows up there. Because if it's been installed prior to the switchover, and you didn't actually go into the content hub and actually manually deploy the solution, it may not show up. So I'm making this call, and then there's this big filter in here, which I don't think half of this is really needed, but this is what the Microsoft team does when they load it, so I'm showing it anyway. And then you have to check to see if there's anything in there.
Mm-hmm.
So if not, then you're making the old call, and the old call uses the what is that? The graph resources. And then you can see there's a whole bunch of code just to get the information from there. Depending on the call that you make, the information coming back is going to be formatted differently. That's why there's all these big if. And then once you get the information back, it's easy enough to figure out where the information is and then adjust the appropriate variable and then show it.
Mm-hmm.
But this is something I just figured out last night because I was running the code, getting ready for this, and then realized I was getting zeros for all the different features of a solution, and I couldn't figure out why.
And so, what is the resilience of your PowerShell script if it runs into an error? Would it continue and just go ahead and give you a bunch of asterisks in that spot where the data should have been?
No, it's going to skip that information. I can definitely bulk up on the error trapping on this a bit more. That probably would be a good idea just to figure out. I mean, if I get an error in this call, it's just going to put zeros instead of whatever it's supposed to put. But it's definitely something I could add on to it.
Yeah, I thought it put asterisks in there. You're right, it's zeros, right? I thought it put asterisks, zeros in there, because this is a lot of lines of code. What is this, about 3,000 lines?
Not quite. It's only 885.
All right, so you have to get a chain on that one.
Most of that's because Word itself is so wordy to use.
Word is a thing.
Do something, so I have to put the font to bold, output the text, turn the bold off, so on and so forth.
We can go find you an old copy of Word Perfect. Yeah, you do that. The young people on this call don't get it. Word Perfect.
Surprisingly, I was looking at a Jupyter notebook as part of the Sentinel notebooks, and you can output that in LaTeX, which is something I've not even heard of since college, which was far longer ago than I care to admit. I'm surprised that's still around.
I am too. I wonder who owns it. Who maintains it rather? Yeah, so that's a ways back, right? I'd have to go find a old IDE drive to see if I still had it on there, right? And hopefully I had a ribbon and a motherboard that I could put it on to do that. I think I still got an old machine somewhere that has an IDE interface on it.
That was one of my first jobs in college, was helping all the doctorate candidates use text and LaTeX to output their mathematical formulas and everything else.
Good stuff.
Long time ago.
So what do you, other than what we talked about on this, I made suggestions around, a UX UI interface for it, and you're going to go in and put some error trapping. What other improvements you think, and how should people reach out to you to suggest ideas about, hey, I wonder if you could do this, or if they want to submit some ideas back to you, just write it and then post it on their thing, or how would they get in touch with you to say, hey, you do this?
You can post it on my blog as a comment, or I believe my email's listed there. If you want to send it to GaryBushey@outlook.com, feel free to do that.
Okay,
one of the suggestions I do have is, like I said, doing the RBAC. just so you can see who has permissions. There was a suggestion of showing the tables so you can see about the DCRs and whatnot, but
Mhm.
I can do the call to get a listing of all the tables, but it shows far more tables in this REST API call than what you see in the UI, and I cannot for the life of me figure out how they do a filtering on that. So I have to think about that a little bit more.
When you do a statement that says if table empty, don't project or don't create.
It doesn't. I don't think it has the size. It just has like names and some other information. But I'll double check into that because I think that'd be very useful information to have.
Mhm.
So it's showing more tables than connector. Like, can you describe that a little bit more? That problem?
Sure. If I go into tables,
Mhm.
so I'm in log analytics looking at tables,
Mhm.
and this is showing me
96.
96. Now, if I run the same REST API call that they use to get this information, I
Mhm.
got something like 140. I'm not sure, but that's just a number greater than 96. And I
Interesting.
can't see anything in what's being returned on how they do a filter on that.
Mhm.
So when you see the table, when you see the list is higher than 96, you saying there are no table names to it?
There's table names, but I don't know how they determine that like alert's supposed to show up, but some other table isn't.
Ah, I see what you're saying.
Hmm.
Hmm. I wonder. No, I don't know.
Now, what
Yeah.
I could do is like we have this Apache Access CL is set differently. I
Mhm.
could just show the tables that are set to have a different retention time, but that's not going to show anything around DCR. But I haven't
Is it
even started looking at DCR yet.
Right.
is it because there are two different DCRs?
I
Sentinel-
I'm not sure.
Mhm.
I'd have to see what calls to make to get the DCR information and see if I can filter that way or something. There's got to be
Speaking of
some
that,
way of doing it.
yeah. Speaking of that, I assume that this could be used if a customer is not using Sentinel but using Azure Monitor to be able to pull stuff out of the LAW. If you want to go in and list a configuration of things that you have coming into Azure Monitor, performance up, down, or is it specifically geared toward Sentinel?
So my code is geared towards Sentinel because I'm using the Sentinel REST APIs for the most part.
What what I would mean if I change the API calls, I could still list it out because
Oh yeah,
Sentinel's just Azure Monitor with intelligence built on top of it, right?
yeah.
Yeah, security intelligence. But no, yeah, I'm always trying to break stuff, figure out to do something else with the tool, right, and pull that in. But this is good stuff here.
Yeah, and I'm always thinking like, how can we also have a visual, a report or something like that? Having seen kind of the resource graph query as part of your PowerShell, if there's like a workbook that could be generated alongside.
Wasn't there a tool, Beth, or a feature inside Azure that if you could export and it would give you? Matter of fact, you can see it. It's when you use Azure Monitor. Oh God, what is it called? You can look at all your virtual machines, all your workloads, and it made a graphical representation of it. And it's still in Azure too. It's in Monitor. Yeah, let's take a look at that. And it was like it was something map, and it would actually it looked like the
Yeah,
investigation pane inside Sentinel, and it would
Oh,
just give you
like the network
yeah.
map, right?
There's a graph of it.
yeah. And I can't think of the name of it anymore. But you could click on it; it would show all your workspaces in a in a in a method that looks like they were interconnected and the dependencies upon and what VMs and what NSGs, ESGs, and all of that. It's actually pretty slick.
I think it was network map.
I'm gonna go find it. I think when the podcast we first started a podcast, that was one of the conversation topics, and that it was pretty cool to see. You know who showed me that? Tom Quinn. Big shout out to you, Tom Quinn. Come on the show.
Network Watcher, I think is what we're. If you
Network
look at
Watcher.
Network Watcher.
That may be what it is. Yeah, sounds like it is. Man,
Yeah, it's definitely cool.
yeah, you always create something pretty cool, man. And this is one of those things. This would have been great to have an Ignite toolbox, breakout session. People show their cool tools, right? You,
Oh yeah.
Morton, a few others. Idea for the Ignite next year to the Ignite people that are listening, have a toolbox breakout where people come in and show their cool tools. And then you just have a GitHub for that, and you can go grab the stuff, or your repository of choice, GitLabs, GitHub, whatever. I see you can do it. And your environment is very pristine, no alerts, no nothing, not messy like Beth and I. We have just stuff all over.
It's a terrible mess.
It's a terrible mess. I just hit resolve on everything, right? Close.
Well,
I made an
much like
automation
you, I need
rule.
to rebuild my lab.
Yeah, be careful if you're using one at Microsoft. They tend to disappear without your note, without your knowledge. They'll be gone. Right?
I've got a nice machine to do VMs. I just have to rebuild it since last time.
I got a nice machine. You pay for shipping, I'll send it to you. I got a Dell 720R, got 100 gig of RAM in it, 13 terabytes
Wow.
internal, 32 processors, and I think I got I'm finna date this machine. It came with an Equalogic SAN.
Wow.
It's down there keeping my
Dell PC that I loaded up.
it's down there keeping my basement warm when it's on, and it's dehumidifying my basement.
Why are you trying to get rid of it?
And my wife says it makes too much noise. It's just humming. Yeah.
And that would be hard to hear because you just have to close the door on it. Do you use
I close the door on it, but in the winter I don't have to turn the heat on downstairs for sure, at all.
nice?
And you could track your electric bill very closely, on, off, right? And
Go outside and watch the little thing spin much faster.
yeah, it's been much faster. I got to upgrade the hypervisor. So Trevor on the pod gave me a great tip on how to go get vCenter inexpensively, so I can upgrade mine because I'm on like 6.7. So thanks Trevor for that info to be able to do that. I didn't realize it was that cheap to get single vCenter for that. Noodle say, have you been using GitHub Copilot, Gary?
No, I have not. I think I have access to it. I just haven't had time to set it up.
Yeah, I have access to it. I think you get a free subscription if you're FTE at Microsoft. Pretty sure about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing an email about that.
Yeah. Noodle also said, Ed, do you need a power plant to run it? No, Noodle. I need a long extension cord to plug into my neighbor's outlet outside. I just run an extension cord through the window until they're at their house. They wonder why their lights keep going out. Yeah.
And I do have to agree with one of Noodle's comments about books quickly coming out of date. Although with the Sentinel book that Richard and I wrote, Richard Diver, we have 2 editions, and we get a weekly update of how well they sell. The first edition, which still says Azure Sentinel, still sold quite well last week for some reason. You would think people would just get the newer version, but that one sold pretty well as well.
Yeah, I would see myself buying the first edition to get the base and then reading the Delta in the second one, right? What do you call that when you do the updates inside like Packet and all these places? Like
Just a different edition.
Yeah, there's a little phrase that says, "Was it Straka, errata, or something like that?" When you update it.
Is any errors that were made.
Yeah, something like that.
Of course, in our book there aren't any.
No. You and Diver wouldn't write anything with errors in it, right?
No.
It's a feature. It's undocumented tip.
Exactly.
Undocumented tip.
Well, part of the reason about the books coming out of date, I'm following in Rod's footsteps, and this one I'm writing right now about using REST APIs, it's going to be the same thing. It's a Word document, PDF. Maybe I'll make a Kindle if there's any reason to do that, but hopefully I'll have this done in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
So
I'm buying it.
No, it's free. It's just the PDF, so I'm just doing it for the heck of it.
Which number book is this? Is this number 3?
Well, technically, yeah. I mean, if you want to call it a book, it would be the 3rd one.
It's a book. It's an ebook. There you go. It's an ebook. I don't have your Sentinel book, but rest assured I'm going to go ahead and pop on and get it. I assume Amazon, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm going through all the different API calls. Now, again, we have documentation on this online, but I found some of it's lacking because a lot of the times all they do is taking the JSON Swagger file and making it easier to read.
Mm-hmm.
What I'll do is I'll go through each call. Well, not that one. So, like for alert rule templates, I'm showing you how to actually make the calls. There's different ways of doing it, and then you get the sample request as well as the response. And I'm using actual values coming from my own environment. Not that it would help anybody, but at least you can see, yes, this is a GUID as opposed to actually putting a name in there. Whereas sometimes in the documentation, it's hard to tell. So I'm hoping this is going to help people if they want to start using the REST APIs, have a much better idea of how they work.
Or you could just be a genius like Matt Egan, who just eats APIs for breakfast, right?
Just absorbs them.
Yeah, he talks in APIs. You got to make a call to him before he'll respond.
Yeah, so if you go to my website, the latest blog post is about this book, and you can get the latest version downloaded from GitHub. I'll be updating it periodically.
Yep, you've been doing this since, at least the way your blog is laid out, since January 2020. So not new to the game, and it's laid out very nice, sequential. You build upon stuff you've been reading. I got to go back and reread your analytic rule template API post, because I ran into a question. I was trying to help Andrea out, and she had a question that she had 4 incidents that weren't aggregated together, but they were involving the same entity / artifacts in the alerts. And I told her, I said, I think you have to set that in the analytic rule to be able to group them.
Yep.
If you don't, yeah.
And by default, they're not set to do that.
And that's what I told her. So I guess I was right. Yeah, you have to do it that way. And I'm helping somebody write some custom analytics and adjust the threshold. It's like he couldn't pull back in the MCAS by the MCAS. Microsoft Defender for cloud apps, whatever they call it these days. Noodle said, when are we going to get the introduction to Gary's dog? Go ahead, Gary, introduce the dog.
Crypto, come here. Get your lazy butt up. Come here, buddy. Can you see him? Look,
hey, Crypto.
Everybody wants to meet you, buddy. This is
Hey.
Crypto.
He's like, yeah. About that. I'm surprised Beth Killer Cat hasn't jumped when he saw the dog.
You never know.
Boy.
You never know when that cat would just appear, right?
When we have our monthly or bi-monthly team meetings, like the first 5 minutes, it's everybody showing off their pets or new kids or
same thing.
Yeah, he's a good boy.
No offense to parents out there. I'm a parent myself. I'm sorry. There you go. But Gary, once again, when I saw the LinkedIn post, and then I subsequently went on your website, I check Tuesdays, Thursdays, and whenever I do it, I saw this. I said, we got to get him on the show to talk about this, because this is something people always complain about. There is no good way to document, my environment. And they're piecemealing with screenshots and stuff. Like I said, they're only good as the days you screenshot it. This right here, definitely something to go in the toolkit. And we appreciate you for coming on. We got to get you to come on and host the show. You've hosted the show before, right?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, that's right.
Actually, my boss was on.
Who, Carr?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that. Shout out, Carr. You got to get on the show, right? Come back on the show. Well, everyone, thank you so much for coming on. Beth, thanks for filling in to my lazy and slacking co-host who didn't want to show up today. Just kidding.
Thanks for letting me.
Coming on, everybody bailed, or
everybody is on a plane, on vacation, or teaching a class, right? I guess if you look at it that way, I'm the lazy one. I'm sitting here doing that and hosting podcast shows, right? But Beth and I will be at it at Ignite. If anybody's out there, you see us, come up, say Microsoft Security Insights, and we'll buy you a beer or water, your liquid of choice. You can drink the beer and spit out the beer piece and keep the water. How about that? So everyone, next week we'll do it again. Thanks everyone. Appreciate it.
Bye everyone.